Part 2. Lower Fire Month. 9th month. Day 3. 9:49. Climb walked down the kingdom's main street. With nothing noticeable about his outer appearance, he was completely blended into the crowd. Needless to say, he was not wearing his eye-catching full-plate armor. Using a special alchemy item would allow him to change the color of the armor, but he didn't feel the need to go so far to have it on him all the time. That was why his gear at the moment was light. A chain mail beneath his clothes, and a longsword at his waist, to set him apart from the average citizen. His current equipment was similar to those of patrolmen and mercenaries, the kind one could find anywhere. It was somewhat enough for others to keep a respectable distance, but not so heavily armed that the crowd would part before him. A person who was heavily armed would no doubt be an adventurer. They armed themselves to be noticeable, rather than out of necessity. Adventurers who wore gear that made them stand out were not uncommon at all. It served as a form of advertisement for their services. There were those among them who went for an especially novel appearance, so that they would leave a strong impression and spread rumors to sell their names. It was the trademark or brand of an adventurer. But the people that Climb was on his way to meet had no need for such antics. The members of Blue Rose spread rumors simply by walking down the street. Eventually, an inn for adventurers could be seen by the side of the main street. The place had lodgings, a stable, and a yard large enough to swing a sword in. Behind its splendid outward appearance was an equally beautiful, decorated interior. The rooms were even fitted with windows made of clear glass. As the highest class inn in the kingdom, it was a place where adventurers who were confident in their skills and could afford the expensive lodging costs gathered. Climb ignored the guard standing at the side and opened the door to the inn. The first floor doubled as a pub and restaurant. Compared to the large parlor, there were only a few adventurers inside. High-class adventurers were as rare to see as they were skilled. The faint chatter in the room died down for an instant, and eyes filled with curiosity focused on him. Climb ignored them and looked around. There were only strong adventurers everywhere he looked. Every one of them could easily beat Climb in a fight. Whenever he came to such a place, he clearly realized just how small he really was. Climb stopped himself from becoming disheartened and moved his eyes to a certain spot in the inn's interior. The farthest corner of the room, his eyes fell to rest on two figures sitting around a circular table. One of them had a small stature and was wrapped in a jet-black robe. The face was hidden, not because of the lighting, but because it was entirely covered by a strange mask with a red jewel embedded in its forehead. The area around the eyes were exposed only by a thin crack, so that it was impossible to even tell the color of the pupils. And the other figure, in opposite to the previous person, with her small body, the other possessed an overwhelmingly huge physique, enough to make one think of a huge rock. In a way, the body could be described as plump, but not because it was fat. First, the arms were as thick as tree trunks. In order to support the head, the neck was as thick as an average woman's thighs, and the head resting on top of that neck was a square. The chin was wide, so as to better clench the teeth for power. The eyes, for scanning the surroundings, looked like the eyes belonging to a carnivore. The blonde hair was cut short, strictly for functionality. The chest hidden behind her clothing was conspicuously bloated by muscles trained over and over. It was no longer the chest of a woman. The female-only adamantite rank adventurer team, Blue Rose. These were two of its members, magic caster Evil Eye and warrior Gagaron. Climb headed in their direction. The person whom he needed to speak to nodded her head and shouted in a husky voice, "Yo, Cherry Boy!" Once more, the stares focused on Climb, but there were no sounds of jeering. As if they had suddenly lost their interest, they turned away instead, with something akin to sympathy filling their eyes. There was a reason for the cold treatment by the other adventurers. They knew that even for orichalcum or mithril rank adventurers, showing discourtesy to Gargaron's guest wasn't courage, only reckless bravado. Even while he was being made fun of, Climb calmly walked forward. Since Gargaron wouldn't change her nickname for him no matter how often he asked, the most effective method was to pretend that he had given up and no longer cared. "It has been a long time, Miss Gargaron, and Lady Evil Eye." He approached the two and bowed his head.
"Yeah, long time no see. What, did you come here because you wanted to be embraced by me?"
While motioning her chin to take a seat, Gargaron asked him with a beast-like grin across her face. But Climb shook his head with a blank expression. This was also part of Gargaron's usual banter. Although it was a greeting, it did not mean that she was joking. If Climb ever replied in the affirmative, even in jest, Gargaron would immediately drag him to a room on the second floor with overwhelming strength, without any chance for retaliation or reconsideration. Gargaron, who would openly proclaim that plucking a fresh cherry was her hobby, was that type of person. Different from Gargaron, Evil Eye stared directly in front of her and showed no sign of turning her face. You could not tell which direction the eyes beneath the mask were pointing.
"No. I'm here because of a request from Lady Indra."
"Huh? From the leader?"
"Yes. I will deliver her message. It seems we'll have to move out soon. I will explain the details when I return. Be ready for battle immediately."
"I got it. You're sure going through a lot of trouble for something so trivial."
Climb remembered that he had something else to say to Gargaron, who wore a wide grin.
"I had the fortune of being instructed in the sword by Sir Stronov today. He praised the high vertical strike that you taught me in the past."
He had learned that move from her in this inn's backyard. Gargaron smiled brightly.
"Oh, that? Not bad at all. But..."
"Yes, I will not be satisfied and train harder."
"That's good and all. But assume that move will be blocked, and start working on a skill to come after it."
Whether it was coincidence or just common sense to first-rate warriors, Gargaron's advice was very similar to Gazef's. Apparently misunderstanding Climb's surprised face, Gargaron continued to speak with a chuckle.
"Obviously, that vertical slash is meant to be a one-hit kill. Normally, the correct way to go about it is to choose from a wide repertoire of moves, depending on the situation. But the thing is, that's impossible for you."
She was implying that it was because he had no talent.
"So, work on a combination that consists of at least 3 attacks. Make it so that even if they're blocked, your opponent can't switch to the offensive."
Climb nodded.
"Well, if you're against monsters that have 8 arms and such, it may not work, but it should be fine against humans. Even though having a pattern will be the end of you if it gets found out, it's still pretty effective against opponents that you meet for the first time. Think of something that will let you push forward over and over and over."
"I understand."
Climb earnestly nodded his head. This morning, only once could he push forward into Gazef like that. Everything else was blocked and countered. But did that shake his confidence? No. Did he fall into despair? No. The opposite. It was the complete opposite. For an ordinary person to be able to get that close to the strongest warrior in the kingdom, no, the surrounding countries. He also knew very well that his opponent had not been fighting seriously. But to Climb, who was walking a pitch-black road completely devoid of any light whatever, it was more than enough of encouragement. It told him that his efforts were not in vain. When he remembered that, what Gargaron was trying to say touched his heart. Even though he wasn't confident about whether or not he could successfully come up with a combination of attacks, the burning urge to do it still rose up from the bottom of his stomach. The next time he fought the warrior captain, he wanted to be strong enough to make him a bit more serious.
Now that I remember, didn't you ask Evil Eye for something a while back? Was it magic training?
Yes. Klein glanced over at Evil Eye. Back then, it was turned down by a scoff from inside the mask. No doubt, bringing up the same topic now, when nothing had changed, would have the same result. But still...
Kid.
He heard a voice that was difficult to read. Even disregarding the fact that it was through a mask, it held a very mysterious tone. Even with the mask, as long as the sound was not too thick, it should be possible to somewhat make out the timbre of the voice. However, in this case, you could make out neither the age nor the emotion behind Evil Eye's voice. It was barely enough to just recognize the voice as female. It sounded like both an old woman and a young girl, flat and emotionless. It was because Evil Eye's mask was a magic item, but why did she go that far in order to hide her face?
You don't have the talent. Try something else.
A crude remark, as if that was all she needed to say. Klein himself knew at least that much better than anyone. He did not have any talent for magic. No, not only magic. No matter how much he swung his sword, no matter how much he bled, and how hard his hands became from the blisters that covered them, he could not reach the level that he wanted to. The wall that those with talent could easily overcome, even that became an obstacle that he could not traverse over. Even so, that was not a reason for him to be lazy with his efforts to cross over that wall. As long as he was talentless, the only thing that he could do was believe that his efforts would allow him to take at least one more step forward at a time.
It seems you can't accept it.
As if she could read Klein's emotions beneath his expressionless iron mask, Evil Eye continued to speak.
Those who possess talent have it from the very beginning. Some claim that talent is simply a bud that has yet to bloom, and that everyone has it. I see it as nothing more than envy. Words like that are so the inferior can console themselves. The leader of those famous 13 heroes was the same.
The leader of the 13 heroes. There was a legend that in the beginning, the hero was just an ordinary person. Although that person was weaker than anyone, the hero became the strongest by endlessly swinging a sword despite being covered in wounds. The hero possessed a power that could rise without end.
But that person's talent had simply not blossomed at that time. You're different. Even with effort, you're still only at that level. Talent undoubtedly exists. There are those who have it, and those who do not. So, I won't tell you to give up, but at least know where you stand.
Evil Eye's cold words brought a curtain of silence, and it was she herself who broke that silence.
Gazef Stronov. Now that one is a good example of a human with talent. Klein, do you believe that you can feel the difference between the two of you with hard work?
His words wouldn't come out. It was only this morning that he experienced the distance between them, which couldn't be overcome with any sort of training.
Actually, he might not be a fair comparison. The only ones I know of who can rival his talent with the sword are the 13 heroes. Gagaron here is fairly skilled, but still can't beat him.
Don't ask for the impossible. Warrior Captain Gazef is someone with one foot in the realm of heroes.
Word on the streets is that you're also a hero, although the gendered suffix remains a question mark.
Gargaron replied to Evil Eye's words with a laugh.
Hey, Evil Eye. Evil Eye, weren't the heroes considered to be monsters with talent that was in a different league? The type transcending the realm of humans?
I won't deny it.
And I'm only human. It's impossible for me to reach the level of those heroes.
But you still possess talent. You're different from a human like Climb. Climb. Don't try to reach for the stars.
Climb knew that very well, but it was also true that being told he had no talent so repeatedly would inevitably make him feel disappointed in himself. Even so, he had no intention of changing his ways and giving up. It was because his body was for the princess. Sensing something akin to martyrdom from Climb, Evil Eye clicked her tongue behind her mask.
I guess you won't stop even if I say it like this.
No.
You are foolish. Truly foolish.
She shook her head, unable to understand him.
Moving forward with an unreachable wish will definitely ruin your body. I'm repeating myself, but know where you stand.
I understand what you're trying to say.
But I see you have no intention of listening. You're beyond foolish. It will lead to an early grave. Won't there be someone who will cry if you were to die?
Huh? What's this, Evil Eye? Were you bullying Climb because you were worried about him?
Evil Eye's shoulders slumped at these words. She grabbed Gagaron by the collar with her gloved hand and shouted as she stared at her.
The meathead needs to shut her mouth!
But I'm right, though, aren't I?
Evil Eye could not say a word to Gagaron, who remained calm, even when she had her by the collar. She leaned deeply into her chair and, trying to change the subject, turned her arrow to Climb.
First, master your knowledge of magic. If your knowledge improves, then you may be able to predict the moves of your enemies who use magic. Then you will be able to respond appropriately.
Hey, you know how many different spells there are, and you're telling him to study all of them? Aren't you being too cruel?
That's not true. There is a common pool of spells that a magic caster typically focuses on. He can start by studying those.
Evil Eye implied that if he couldn't even manage that, he should give up.
No matter how many there are, he'll probably be able to manage if he can study the spells up to the 3rd tier.
Hey, Evil Eye, you said magic goes up to the 10th tier, and that no one's managed to master those. But there's information on them. Why is that?
With the air of a teacher instructing a student, Evil Eye moved around in her robe. As she did so, suddenly the noise from their surroundings fell distant. It was like a thin curtain had been draped over them and their table.
Don't be alarmed. I merely activated a trivial item.
Just how cautious was she of others listening in? Realizing that Evil Eye's answer to Gargaron's question was important enough to warrant using an item, Climb fixed his posture in anticipation.
In an old legend, one of the stories passed down, there exists a group called the 8 Greed Kings. Some of them beings who stole the power of God and ruled this world using their absolute strength.
Climb knew the story. As a fairy tale, it was quite unpopular, but anyone who was somewhat educated knew about it. To sum it up, the 8 Greed Kings appeared 500 years ago. Taller than the sky, with likenesses of dragons, the 8 Greed Kings destroyed numerous countries and ruled the world with their overwhelming strength. But in the end, their greed pitted them against one another and resulted in their demise. Although the story was obviously unpopular, there were differing opinions on whether it was fact or fiction. Climb himself felt that the story was overly exaggerated. However, there were many among the adventurers who felt that they did, in fact, once exist, with power greater than any that currently existed in the present time. The basis for their belief was the existence of the desert city far to the south. It was said that the city was built to be the capital back when the 8 Greed Kings ruled the continent. While Klein was deep in his own thoughts, Evil Eye continued to speak.
It is said that the 8 Greed Kings had a countless number of powerful items, and the greatest among them was an item called the Nameless Spellbook. A grimoire by that name exists. There is your answer.
What? So you're saying that the spells are in that book?
Right. That magic item holds power beyond comprehension. They say that all magic is recorded in that grimoire. I have no idea what kind of magic it uses. There is a rumor that even newly created magic is automatically recorded.
He knew about the legend of the 8 Greed Kings, but it was the first time that Klein had heard about such a book. He vaguely understood just how rare such an item was, and remained silent while listening carefully.
With it as the foundation, we were able to discover the existence of 10th tier spells. Of course, there are only a few who know of this story and the Nameless Spellbook.
Klein gulped loudly.
You do not have any plans to obtain that nameless spellbook?
It was a question he wondered, because they were the highest class adventurers in the kingdom. But Evil Eye snorted back a laugh, as if he had said something idiotic.
According to the person who's actually seen it, the strong magic guarding the grimoire prevents anyone without a strong sense of justice from touching it. An item that's worth a country will carry with it dangers to match. I know what I can and can't do, and I would rather not die in a fool's death like the 8 Greed Kings.
It's possible even for the party whose leader possesses a weapon of the 13 heroes?
In a different league, that one. Well, this is something I heard offhand as well, so I can't be certain. The talk has gone off topic. Anyway, there's your answer, Gagaron. Do you understand?
And for some reason, Evil Eye showed a brief moment of hesitation before opening her mouth.
Climb. Even if you desire power, don't give up your humanity.
Give up on my humanity?
Are you speaking of the likes of demons that appear in stories? That, and others like turning into an undead or magic life forms.
A normal human cannot do something like that.
That's true, but turning into an undead will often twist your heart as well. Desiring perfection, becoming an undead to achieve one's ideal, the heart will be tempted by the changing flesh, and the resulting transformation will be terrifying.
A tinge of pity could be felt in the voice behind the emotionless mask. Evil Eye looked as if she were staring far off into the distance. Gagaron watched her and spoke out cheerfully.
Won't the princess be surprised if she wakes up one day and Klein became an ogre?
As if she understood what was hidden behind Gagaron's comment, Evil Eye reverted back to her unreadable voice.
Well, that's also another method. Transformation magic can be made so that its effects are only temporary. To put it simply, it's one way of raising your physical strength.
I would like to pass on that.
In regards to becoming stronger, it's quite effective. The physical capabilities of the human body are not very impressive. With the same talent, a stronger body would be more advantageous.
That was obvious. If the skills were the same, the side with more power would have the upper hand.
In reality, there were many among the 13 heroes who were not human. Even if they are called the 13 heroes, they numbered far more. It just so happens that only 13 had legends attached to them. The battle against the demon god was one that transcended the racial barrier. Those who wanted to put the focus on humans would be rather hesitant to perpetuate a legend where those of other races played an active role.
Evil Eye spoke with a cynical edge to her voice. The atmosphere then immediately shifted, and she continued on, her tone heavy with nostalgia.
The wielder of the cyclone axe was the warrior captain of the air giants. If any members of the elf royalty who possessed traits of the old elves were there, it would be the Dark Knight, the original owner of Maruyama, our leader's demonic sword. The knight shared the blood of demons, a mixed blood. The 4 swords of darkness.
It was said that one of the 13 heroes, the Dark Knight, wielded 4 swords: Evil Sword Hyomilus, Demon Sword Kilinaram, Necrotic Sword Kolokudabar, and Death Sword Sophies. The leader of Blue Rose, Lakyus, possessed one of them.
Demon Sword Kilinaram, the strongest sword of darkness that is said to be created from condensing endless dark energy. Hey, Evil Eye, is it true that if you unleash its full power, it can shoot out enough darkness to swallow a country whole?
What are you talking about?
Evil Eye seemed perplexed.
Our leader said so a while back, when we were alone. She grabbed her right hand pretty hard and said something about how only a woman of faith like her can suppress its power.
I've never heard anything like that.
Evil Eye tilted her head, thinking over it.
If the owner says it, then it could be true.
Then the thing about Dark Lakyus, who was born from her dark consciousness, might be true too?
What?
When was it? She was muttering that to herself while she was alone. I don't think she knew that I was there, so I eavesdropped a bit. I, the source of the darkness, will take over your body once you let your guard down and release the demon sword's power. Or something like that. It sounded pretty dangerous.
That's not impossible, I suppose. Cursed items do take over their owners. If that happens to Lakyus, then it won't be a laughing matter.
She told me to keep it a secret, but that's a little... I asked her about it personally, but her face got really red and told me not to worry about it.
She must have been embarrassed that a cleric like her was controlled by a cursed item. They're the ones who lift the curses, after all. Maybe she didn't want to worry us? That girl, she's been worrying about it all alone.
I haven't seen her do that since then, but just think about it. Ever since she got that sword, didn't she start wearing those pointless armor rings on all 5 of her fingers?
I thought it was a fashion. Are you saying that those are sealing magic items, or possibly a catalyst?
Climb could not maintain his poker face and frowned. The current conversation drove him to think that Lakyus was possibly being slowly dominated by her evil item. Thinking of where she was just recently only served to increase his restlessness at the table.
Lady Renaer might be in danger.
Evil Eye stopped Climb, who was about to run off.
Don't worry. It's not as if something is going to happen immediately. Even if she were to fall under that dark power, there is no way that it could happen before the person herself noticed it. If she didn't want us to know, then she most likely judged that she can keep it in check. I don't doubt her willpower, but to think that sword had such an ability, I had no idea.
Should we send word to Azuth, just in case?
It's a bit frustrating to seek help from a rival. But since it's a problem about his niece, then I guess it would be for the best.
Okay. Then shall we get moving? I need to find out where he is.
Yes, we have to be prepared to support Lakyus at any time.
Only Animantite can stop Animantite, after all.
I just remembered. Gagaran, a 3rd Animantite rank adventurer team is supposed to be residing in Arantel.
What, really? That's news to me. Did you hear it at the Adventurers Guild this morning?
No, that's Oh, right. I apologize. I forgot to tell you. From what I hear, their color is black.
Black? We have red and blue, so I thought the next one would be brown or green.
Black is a color used in the faith of the 6 gods, so there is nothing strange about it. The next team might be white.
I'm not really a fan of the slain theocracy, though. Because of that one incident, we fought those guys who looked like they were from some secret unit.
Despite Climb feeling like he had heard something incredibly dangerous, the conversation ignored him and continued on.
You do not like them, Gargaron? Although this may seem ironic, I can sympathize with their policy. Well, it's more that I feel that the role of the guardian of the human race that they impose on themselves is just, at least from a human's perspective.
What? So it's okay for them to kill innocent elves and demi-humans?
The disgust was apparent on Gagaron's face. Her eyes burned with an intense hatred. Evil Eye answered her animosity with a mere shrug.
Around here, there are several human countries like the Kingdom, the Holy Kingdom, and the Empire. Gagaron, did you know, the farther you venture out, there are fewer and fewer countries that are made up of humans. Depending on the location, there are countries where humans are used as slaves. One of the biggest reasons none of them are near us is due to the slain theocracy hunting down the demi-humans.
With her anger cooled by Evil Eye's words, Gagaron sullenly muttered to herself.
Well, demi-humans are stronger than humans, after all. Humans won't be able to do anything if they unite and advance their civilization.
If you are human, you must evaluate those from the theocracy highly. Of course, they may have a cruel side, but there are none who are more beneficial to humanity. Well, it would be a different story if you were to ask the same of the minorities that are being purged. Not only that, there's a very good chance they were the ones who formed the original Adventurers Guild.
Really?
Maybe. The truth is unknown, but there is still a high possibility. The Adventurer Guild was formed after the battle against the demon god, and in those days humans were weak. They preserved their strength and, as not to cause friction between them and the kingdom, formed the guild so they could provide support.
When she finished talking, a peculiar silence covered the table. Climb could not endure the atmosphere and opened his mouth to end it.
Forgive me for interrupting, Lady Evil Eye. You said that new adamantite rank adventurers had appeared. What are their names? Right. It was Momon. The leader is a warrior who's called the Hero in Black, and apparently the name of the team hasn't been decided yet. It seems they're just called Black for now.
And the other members?
I hear it's a 2-man team, with the other member being called the Beautiful Nabe, a magic caster.
What? Just 2? What are you saying? They must be idiots, overconfident in their skill. No, that's why they're adamantite. They must be hiding something amazing. So, what kind of feats did they achieve?
Apparently it only took them around 2 months. First they took care of the incident in Arantel regarding those thousands of undead that spawned. Then they exterminated the coalition of goblin tribes from the north, gathered an incredibly rare herb from the Tove Mountains, subjugated a gigantic basilisk, and exterminated a group of undead that spilled over from the Karcha Plains. I also heard that they defeated a powerful vampire.
A gigantic basilisk?
Climb groaned. With characteristics of both a lizard and a snake, the gigant basilisk was a giant monster measuring 10 meters in length. It possessed a petrifying gaze with deadly poison coursing through its veins. What was worse was that its thick skin was as hard as mithril. It was a truly terrifying creature. If they were really able to defeat a monster that could destroy a small town by itself, then it would not have been strange for them to rise to adamantite so quickly. However, there was a problem. That's incredible.
But did they really beat a gigant basilisk with only 2 people? Isn't that impossible with just a warrior and a magic caster? Not a chance.
Indeed, with only 2 people, it was close to impossible, especially if it was only a warrior and a magic caster in particular. They did not have anyone to heal them. Not only would there have been no way for them to defend against the petrifying gaze and the poison, but also the variety of other attacks at the monster's disposal.
I apologize. I don't think you can classify them as only 2. From what I heard, they tamed the virtuous king of the forest by force.
Virtuous king? What kind of monster is that?
Clyme remembered hearing the name in one of the legends. However, interrupting here would have been the height of discourtesy, so he refrained.
I'm not exactly sure either. According to the legend that's been passed down, it is a demon that has been living in the Tove Mountains. It's supposed to be strong beyond comparison. In the past, an acquaintance apparently hadn't been there 200 years ago when that person visited the mountains.
Evil Eye shrugged as she said the number 200. Although it was an age possible for an elf, by her behavior it may have just been a joke.
So, how much of that is actually true? Rumors usually come with a bit of an oomph, don't they?
That's how it was. While telling the story to others, the person doesn't even notice that they are exaggerating the facts. Bodies that have been chopped to pieces make it difficult to get an exact head count. At times, the adventurers themselves spread rumors to promote their names. But Evil Eye raised one finger and waved it side to side in a dismissive gesture.
At least this incident is most likely true. According to the first rumor that came from Arantel, he exterminated an undead giant with his sword and broke through thousands of undead. This is from the reports of the sentries who managed to survive. Their reports were all nearly identical, so they shouldn't be exaggerated. Apparently, it was confirmed that they defeated the 2 responsible for the incident from their corpses farther in. What's more, it was after they defeated 2 skeletal dragons.
Seeing Gagaron's mouth hanging open, Clyme asked a question.
Is that difficult even for you, Miss Gagaron?
If there were thousands of zombies or skeletons, then they wouldn't be a problem. It's possible to break through them. Probably could have done something about the 2 skeletal dragons, too. But I'm not too sure about the 2 masterminds behind such a huge incident. I'm not confident I could win when I don't even know their abilities.
There were even some remarks that they may have been from Zuranon.
Really, Evil Eye? Man, if they were the disciples of Zuranon, then it would have been over right there. Beating them after breaking through the swarm would be too hard. And if you made even a small mistake and got poisoned or paralyzed, it would be all over. What did these guys do for healing? Did they rely on potions? This Momon warrior guy could be using faith magic like our leader. Or maybe it's the beauty with him.
I can't deny the possibility.
Evil Eye nodded her head quickly up and down.
But still, a giant basilisk. That's still impossible. For a warrior, that's the worst enemy for someone who fights in close range. Even if I can use Gazebane, it's still hard without backup.
Did you hear, Clyme? It's impossible for Gagaron alone. In other words, it depends on the skills of that woman Nabe. If they fight together, then it would be possible. Maybe.
It would be easy if that Nabe person was as strong as you, Evil Eye. Wouldn't it be simple for you to just solo it from afar?
That's asking too much. I would have to fight seriously.
If you were there in the same 2 incidents with me, then the best I could take on would be the skeletal dragon. But then I would be relying on you too much, Evil Eye. If I paired up with an Orichalcum-ranked magic caster, and it was just us 2, then that'd be impossible.
Clyme had a strange thought. Just how strong of a magic caster was Evil Eye? A normal team would be made up of members with similar strength and experience. Was there that big of a difference between the 2 of them?
That is not true. I know how strong you are, Miss Gagaron. You would not fall behind a group of newcomers.
Wow, thanks for the praise. Okay, want to do it?
No, I'm afraid I'll have to decline.
And that's why you're still a virgin. Didn't you hear that it's disgraceful for a man to refuse a meal that's been laid out in front of him? Why are you still carrying it around like it's something good? What are you going to do when you actually do it with a girl that you like? Do you want to be told that you're clumsy? Is that what you're into? Are you a masochist?
Digging into Climb without even giving him a chance to respond, Gagaron let out a big sigh.
Well, it's not like I'm pressuring you. I'm okay with it whenever you want, so just tell me when you're ready. But that beauty... It's a pretty embarrassing nickname. Isn't the name just for show?
She's supposed to be quite beautiful. According to my information,
Climb thought that Evil Eye's gaze stopped on him for a brief instant, then soon understood that he was right.
Rivals the Golden Princess.
Gagaron looked at Climb playfully. He predicted what she was going to say next and made the first move.
What is beautiful and what is ugly is different for everyone, and to me there is no one who is more beautiful than Lady Renaer.
Yes, yes. A voice of obvious disappointment.
We've run off topic quite a bit. I'm sorry for having you take part in needless chatter. We will start our preparations like Lakyus instructed.
Gagaron and Evil Eye stood from their seats. Climb followed suit.
Sorry, Climb. There's a lot I want us to do together, but I don't think now's the time.
Not at all, Miss Gagaron. Please don't worry about it. And Lady Evil Eye as well. Thank you for your advice.
Gagaron stared silently at Climb, then let out a tired laugh.
Fine, you're going back, right? Look after the leader, will you? Bye-bye, virgin. And make sure you keep your items secure. That weapon at your waist isn't what you normally use, right?
Right. This is in case of emergencies.
You don't know what's going to happen, so even if you don't wear your armor, at least always carry your sword with you. That's what it means to be an adventurer, especially a warrior. Also, do you have that item I gave you?
The bell? I have it right here.
Climb tapped the pouch tied to his belt.
I see. Then that's fine. Remember, as warriors, the only thing we can do is swing our weapons. But that's dangerous. Magic items are what lets us prepare for those dangers. Get a lot of items and hold on to them. And keep at least 3 bottles of potions with you. It's what saved me in the past.
He had 3 potions, but only brought 2 with him. Climb responded that he understood.
You're surprisingly considerate of others.
You making fun of me, Evil Eye? Sorry for keeping you, Climb. Basically, what I meant to say is to always be prepared beforehand.
I understand. Thank you.
Gagaron nodded deeply.